Alright boys, today we're going to be talking about how Jon Zherka gets away with saying the most out-of-pocket, kind of immoral, dangerous sort of things, but also stuff that is really funny, and also stuff that is really resonant with the base that is the people on the internet, the young men in America. How do people think this guy is so funny, yet so based on so many issues? Let's break it down in this video. Before I do that though, I'm going to preface it with saying that this title of the video says like, he's going to defend sleeping with his own daughter. Now, if you're a fan of the channel, that's kind of like ironic given the circumstances of some of the videos I made. I've made videos on people that have actually done that sort of thing, and so to actually see somebody advocate it like Zherka is really funny. And moreover, the dramatic irony is that he's probably not being completely serious, but there is some truth to what he's saying, and so this is why you can blend in the politics with the comedy, and it comes into this sort of like, what the hell is this guy cooking? But then he's kind of on to something. You smell it, a little bit of bacon coming in, and now all of a sudden you're kind of intrigued, okay? So right now he's going to defend the concept of marrying his own daughter. Odd, yeah, but think about it. Also, coming from Zherka, Zherka doesn't look like your prototypical incestuous creep, okay? And they come in various sizes. You could be a 6'8", ugly creep, smelly, smoky, disgusting, decrepit, incest daughter fucker. Or you could be Jon Zherka, who's tall, good looking, and, will he smash his daughter? I mean, his daughter would be pretty hot, wouldn't you think? Anyway, the point being, though, is that he clearly is somebody who doesn't look that creepy, so he can get away with more things. So let's see how he can get away with saying the unreasonable, the untenable, which is going to be why guys should sleep with their daughters. I don't know. I want to see how this turns out, because clearly that is ridiculous to say, so.
When you were on my stream, you said that you would marry your daughter.
Whoa.
So do you think if you married your daughter and like had sex with her, that would stop her female inclination of trying to be like toxic towards other women? Do you think that successfully marrying your daughter will do that? Because you said you wanted to do that.
Oh no, he said he'll marry his daughter.
Well, no, he said that he would marry and fuck his daughter at 18. So I'm just curious.
I also read a tweet from him that said he believed that 16-year-old women, even though I said there's no such thing as a 16-year-old women, are ideal for marriage. True. So
no, but I want to know about your daughter though. Like, do you think
you see that? You see how he's like, true. Oh man, that's funny. Again, part of the frame as a man to not really, you're supposed to not let up any ground. So for you to be like, oh, actually, blah, 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 makes you look like you're weak. So you do have to necessarily double down, even if it is the contrarian position. But we'll see how he digs his way out.
Help her be less toxic if you fucked her and married her, like you want to do.
Are you taking his comment?
Yeah, you say that?
He literally,
She's yelling it right now.
No context. I swear this is word for word.
Look, man.
And he recommended to us that we marry our sons.
I just said in a hypothetical, okay? It's like
it wasn't hypothetical.
You said you would.
It's a listen.
Okay.
I just said.
Yeah, I'm curious. It's on your ass.
Check this out. All right.
I just want to know.
All right. All right. Don't cancel me till I hit 1 million subs. Then fuck me up. But check this out. What I said was, since men do all the work in a relationship, if I had a kid with you, God forbid, but if I had a kid with you, it would be 50% of my DNA, 50% of like the Puerto Rican, I guess. But now, if it's my blood-related daughter, that's 75% my kid. I put in more work. So my goal is to marry my firstborn. But this is just a dream I had. Yeah. And in the dream, it made sense. Did it not make sense in the dream?
But I just want to know. You thought.
Okay, you see, what he said was so fundamentally stupid and ridiculously immoral that people that already like Zherka are going to just think that he's joking. And he is actually somewhat joking. Obviously, he doesn't want to commit incest like some other people we might think of. But the point is that he clearly is somebody who's a little bit Thorpian in his decorum, his way of thinking. We're talking about somebody who's most likely going to be inclined to do things that are crazy. So you're also, on the other hand, thinking like, would he sleep with his daughter? And yet it's so far out that, are you really concerned about it? Not really. That's like, we'll check back in like 20 years, see what happens with the kid. But the point is that obviously he wants more of himself. So it's more so playing into the archetype of like the narcissistic Chad, narcissist from the Greek poem or whatever, where he's staring at the water, at his own reflection, admiring the beauty he watches. You watch the webcam, you look at yourself, you're like, gosh darn, what if I were a girl? She'd be hot. And so that's his sort of logic, okay? So it's not so much, I want to sleep with my kid. It's more so, I want to sleep with myself. So it gets kind of gay towards the end of that logic tree, but we'll see what he says.
Question again. Do you think marrying your daughter will be better for her health? Like she'll be less toxic?
No, I wouldn't marry my daughter.
You said you would earlier.
No, I wouldn't.
I have it on the VOD. Don't lie.
Roll the clip. Yeah. It was a hypothetical. No. I was exploring Sigmund Freud.
What we were talking about is like people who have like daughters, sons, and then you literally said, oh, well, if I'm going to marry someone, it would be my daughter.
No, this one's a joke, but the 16-year-old one is true.
Okay.
Check this out. There's studies. Oh my God. Wait. Let him cook. No one's getting banned. I got you guys. Don't worry. I'm have to. All right. The 16-year-old girl, right? All I did was read studies. And their studies are talking about in a theocratic society, a 16-year-old girl would marry a 16-year-old boy. Right. And I was like, what is the benefit of this pedophilia? This is gross. Totally gross, right? It's not like they do it in other countries. So anyways, The benefit, apparently, I just read studies. You know, it's like reading black people studies for crime. You know, don't do that, right? I'll hate you for it. I love black people. Can't get enough of them. But if you read studies, people think I hate them. So and Albanians, we're crazy.
Focus on the question.
So now look at this. I just read at 16, a lot of researchers have said the bone.
So right there, he was stalling for time. He lost his train of thought, and so he had to say something funny like something black people. I love them, but if you read the studies, you'd hate them. Stuff like that. He's kind of obfuscating, he's losing track, he's on coke, he doesn't really get it, but he does it in such a way to where a lot of dumb people wouldn't notice that he just had a complete brain fart right there and he actually forgot what he was supposed to say in the first place. The other thing I wanted to point out is that he clarifies that he's Albanian, not like, oh, I'm German, because that would make you white. He says Albanian. Now, if you know anything about Europe, Albania is very much within the confines of Europe. It's in the Balkans, next to Bulgaria, next to Moldova, whatever. Anyway, the point is that clearly he is Albanian, which is like pretty much Italian, like darker, like crypto Mexican, you know, like me. So he's trying to say like, I'm not really white. He is actually white. But, you know, he's a little racially ambiguous. He has a healthy tan. They like you tall, dark, and handsome. So I could see why he's doing that, okay? He's trying to say like, you know what? I'm not even white. You know, I can kind of get away with saying crazy stuff because when you're a minority in America, you can basically kind of like smooth your way out, okay? So we'll see what he cooks here.
More elastic, the hormone profile is higher for an easier birth, and you get more time with the kid instead of hitting the wall and getting old and can't take care of the kid. So the studies are talking about thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, thousands of civilizations. And you know, I know we're doing the gay progressive like last 40 years, whatever, but I just read studies and I said, you know what? Is there an argument against this? And nobody could argue it.
That's so funny.
Well, what's the argument?
The argument is that when you actually look at the statistics, as people make fun of me, most people who have birth at 16 are much more likely to die than if you had birth at 20. So I'm just saying, like,
you know what's weird? You know what's weird? All of these people freaked out when I said a 16-year-old.
Most 16-year-olds that give birth, I'm assuming, got taken advantage of. Most girls that are 16 that have kids are all like poor people. So yeah, those kids are more likely to die. But if you look at girls that are from country clubs, let's say, okay, how about you take a study of 16-year-old girls that were knocked up that had parents in country clubs, as in like, were they rich? Probably weren't dying as much as 20-year-olds, I would have to guess. So, and even if they were dying more than a 20-year-old, how big of a difference really is it, okay? Because obviously in other countries, a bunch of 16, 17-year-olds have kids. So is that more likely than not? I don't know if it's that big of a deal.
Boy marries a 16-year-old
You didn't
girl.
say that. You said 16-year-old
Watch
women.
the clip. This is a retard.
No, it was your tweet.
16-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl is what I said.
You said
okay?
16-year-old women were ready for
You
marriage.
said fuck Liz or shut the fuck up, you liar. I said a 16-year-old boy.
There you go. Easy shutdown. Some girl, objection. He recalls from like half an hour ago in the show. You said you'd smash Lizzo if you were a guy. There you go. Bam. Sidearm. You're done. Derrick Henry, you're down to the ground. Safety on the ground. Touchdown
Let me
imminent.
finish. Like, let's not pretend I'm not the star of the show.
Yeah, you're the star.
There you go. Look at the confidence and the way he said that, and the girl's face is lit up. Even Sneeko knows that. Sneeko objectively has more clout than Zherka ever has had, and yet even still, Zherka says, "You know, I'm the star of the show." There you go. That's all you needed to hear. You know, I'm the star. Smile, Chad, whatever. You know what? Fuck you guys. I'm in charge. Look at that. Great.
16-year-old if you could.
So I said in this study that I read, it made sense. And you know what's so funny?
Would you marry a 16-year-old?
were
Stop asking the question. Would you marry a 16-year-old if you could?
I know, don't look at me like that.
No, I don't like. I like 18. But now check this out.
Finally.
I read this study, and you know what's so funny? All the girls who try to cancel me for it, all of you girls in this room are freaking out that a 16-year-old would be having sex with their married partner. All you whores had sex at 16. Gross. That's the fucking funny part of that tweet. It was bait. You're pretending. Who lost their virginity like me, pure heart? I lost it at 20. None of you. You guys are fucking in rollerblades like disgusting animals, and you're acting like me reading a study. You guys are the pedophiles, not me. Raise your hand here if you lost your virginity at 16, 17. Let's go liars. Look at these liars, bro.
No one's gonna.
15. There you go. There's one.
I was 13, but
No,
we're in a
it's
relationship for 2 years.
Okay.
Hey, no, we were together for 2 years.
There you go.
Attack on both sides. You know, I feel
I didn't even attack you.
I
That
feel
was
like
on
these
you.
porn stars when they're taking all the dicks.
I would say,
I'm not a porn star, babe.
I mean, listen, I would say it's fairly true that women in general lose their virginities at earlier ages than men do.
Yeah.
Keep it 1,000. Yeah.
Yeah, because y'all fucking is 18 and we 14 and y'all fucking us. That's why. So y'all older and we younger.
What?
Okay, by the way the black girl talks, she's like, man, well, I got smashed when I was 14 and the guy was 18. I mean, yeah, but who let that happen, though? Like, okay, yeah, girls have sex earlier because obviously girls kind of like a guy's value goes up as he gets older, and then there's going to be like these creepers that are like, you know, like the whole phenomenon of like the senior going for the freshman. Again, the freshman has to somewhat consent, and obviously that's wrong. But again, like, it's you guys that are inviting this sort of like behavior. So if you guys were a little more traditional, you probably wouldn't find yourself dating a guy that's a lot older than you, or even having a boyfriend in high school, because that is not ideal.
That's how it is. I'm not the only one that happened to me. I lost my virginity with the same guy, and
You should agree.
to this day, it happened to me.
Anyhow,
I thought everybody was.
That's a good point.
Is it older men prey on younger women or younger women prefer older men?
But
No,
also,
older men prey on younger
No,
women.
Byron's right. There's
older
arousal
women
with an
are
older
never
guy.
gonna
There's,
go.
oh, good.
Older women are never gonna fuck a high school boy.
Exactly.
Like you're never.
That's a lie.
Oh,
That's not true at all. My mom is a cougar. She can attest to that.
Yo,
It's
listen,
way less common.
Hold on.
It's way less common.
Guys, she's correct. Like, in general,
Yeah,
women aren't gonna like date men that are significantly younger than them, but men that are older will date women that are significantly younger than them. That's why it's so sensationalized in the news when a woman does actually have sex with a high school kid, because it's not common. That's why they sensationalize it. But in general, it doesn't happen. Women prefer men that are older, and men prefer women that are younger. So I find it funny though how you framed it, that men are predatory for doing that.
No. Let
When that's a
me
female
clarify.
preference.
Let me clarify. Okay.
Yeah.
I think if you are a man and you're specifically looking for a 16-year-old, we know that 16-year-old brains, the prefrontal cortex, it's not developed. They're still developed.
She argues with such a white person. Allegedly, she's a Latina, Puerto Rican. You are not a part of the Latin master race, very clearly. And you're like, oh, I'm blonde. You know who's a blonde Latina? Shakira. You're not on Shakira's level. Not even fucking close. I'm pretty sure she's playing with the other team gender-wise. You know, this Pixie chick, huge forehead, huge brain. And what does she use that capacity for? To be a good person? No, she uses it to espouse these liberal talking points, quoting studies. If you quote studies, I don't want to hear you. That's boring as hell. The way she talks, it's so white. It's annoying.
You can say that to 25. You can say that till 25 years old. So
Look, if anybody makes an argument saying prefrontal cortex, you know they heard it from somebody else. There's not a single person on the planet as of the last 5 years that has ever said the phrase or the word prefrontal cortex. Nobody's ever used that term without hearing it from somebody else. And whoever says that sort of term is like some college professor, some fucking dipshit liberal vouch. Like, really? So if you use prefrontal cortex, just shut up, because your opinion is not great.
Okay, oh my God. Are you gonna let me finish? Are you gonna let me finish? Or are you gonna keep? Okay, good.
Because I'll never finish with you.
So, oh God. So basically,
There you go. He just melted her with the sexual tension, like, hey, I'm never going to be finished with you. And what is she going to do? Take it. She'll never have Zherka. Zherka would not even pity fuck her. And that's not me meat riding or anything. I'm just saying straight up, like, she's unattractive.
All right, go ahead.
okay.
Like, it's a miracle she's let
The
on
older
here.
you get, the more your brain develops. Obviously, this isn't 0 to 100. It's not like, oh, you're selling 25 and then like, you know, you're much more developed. No, it's a progression, right?
Okay.
So if you have an older man preying on somebody who's like 16, that's predatory behavior. Now, if they're more developed and they're like younger, but not like 10 years younger, 8 years younger, that's a different story.
Question: are you using the prefrontal cortex argument as your main basis for why the women are being, I guess, the men are being predators because their prefrontal cortex isn't developed?
It's not just a prefrontal. It's the
That
brain
was the
is
main
Just bite the
thing.
bullet.
but
Just bite the
it's
bullet.
much less developed compared to a 22-year-old, 20-year-old, 25-year-old.
It's not developed until you're 25, really.
Not completely,
Yeah.
but it's not 0 to
No,
100.
no, no.
Well, there you go. There you go. Who fucking cares then? Oh, it's only developed like 97% at 16, but at 18, it's at 98. Is that really the difference? There's a bigger difference than 1% in the way a 18-year-old girl acts compared to 16, yet the prefrontal cortex only changes 1 to 2%, like generally speaking. So is the prefrontal cortex the main vector of attack here? Clearly, it isn't a big difference either way you slice it. Because if you're going to be an autist about it, then it's not fully developed at 25. Clearly, 25 is way too old to have the age of consent at. So you're obviously in the wrong.
Obviously, a 2-year-old is not the same thing as a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
But there's a series of development that happens.
Yeah.
A 25-year-old is closer to a 23-year-old than a 16-year-old.
So you're saying in this instance of a 16-year-old, okay, I agree with you on that, but you got to understand that women overwhelmingly prefer older men.
I don't disagree with that. I just don't think that men should be preying on women who are younger than 18 if they're older than 18.
Why 18?
Okay, I can agree with that.
18 is usually like the age of consent. That's when people start doing
Well,
steps
take the
towards
law out of it.
adulthood.
Why do you think 18?
Because I think that when somebody turns 18, they start taking steps towards adulthood where their development increases, where they're able to do more things, realize more risks in life.
You think there's that much of a maturity difference between a 16-year-old and
Exactly.
an 18-year-old?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
100%.
Because you graduate high school kind of traps your brain into a lot, you know.
Dude, this girl doesn't even sound like she graduated high school talking shit to Sneeko. Sneeko
And
vindicated.
how to follow people. But when you're 18, you're out of it. You do what you want to do. Like, you
What
like
if
your own
18 and
mindset.
19? Is there any difference there?
Much smaller, very little.
But 16 to 18 is a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can all agree legally date above 18. Cool. All right.
No, I only
Depends on the
date
state.
18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. That's it.
Certain
That's all I like.
Certain states, I think the age of consent is like 15, right?
Yeah. Texas is like 17. I think Kentucky or Kansas is like 15.
That's
Different states have different ones, but
Most of
that
these
true?
places have
Yeah,
programs
yeah,
really
really?
well.
And again, so in Kentucky, it's okay to sleep with a 16-year-old, but it isn't isn't okay to sleep with a 17-year-old in Arizona. See how that doesn't really make sense? Yet these liberals who are literally okay with pride marches, that are literally okay with orgies, with OnlyFans, all that sort of hedonism, are all of a sudden opposed to 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. And that's where their logic really doesn't make sense. And again, that's a lot of white people logic. That's a lot of like libertarian, like, well, actually at 18, that's when you can do anything. You can have student loans. You can do, no, it's more of a spectrum. And now that sounds like I'm talking like a liberal, but I mean, it is kind of true, right? That, is the real problem 25-year-old men dating 16-year-olds, or is it that there's an 18-year-old girl that's getting tricked out by some 35-year-old guy from Las Vegas, getting pimped out to fuck several men that are like 50 in some sex ring that is technically legal? So clearly the law isn't a good arbiter for morality, no? But yet none of these liberals will ever call that into account. Mind you.
But there's Romeo and Juliet laws in place to make sure that the gap isn't too crazy. So like if a guy's, let's say a girl is like 17, right, and the guy's like 19, then it'll work because Romeo and Juliet laws, depending on where it is.
The Romeo and Juliet laws usually apply in areas where there's not that leniency. If it's like if they're already giving you 15, then they don't really need to give you the Romeo and Juliet laws, because then that would allow like a 15-year-old to.
Yeah, I mean, as in when I'm saying like when the age of consent is
18.
less. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I have an interesting.
It's an added buffer for people that get into relationships together that are young.
Yes.
But yeah,
I have an interesting theory of why guys like younger women, right? So like my phone freezes from all the women who text me, right?
Oh my God,
it's unfortunate.
So popular.
But now look at this. I genuinely put me on a lie detector test. On God, I find a 25-year-old woman way prettier than a 19-year-old. She does her makeup better. She's more developed. She's just hotter. But
look at that whore to his right. Like, fuck off. Disgusting. But again, W Riz on Zherka. This bitch is like salivating, like, oh my God, I'm an older girl. He finds me more attractive. I don't think he's talking about you, sugar tits.
She comes with an opinion. And it's so fucking, I'm not joking, man. She comes with all this extra stuff. So
he's actually right, by the way, right? Because think about it. A 25-year-old girl is optimized. Like, she probably has gotten every sort of like little procedure that gets her to be the most attractive, is still skinny, pre-wall, still not aging, best makeup, already has the routine down. But they have an opinion. That's his idea, right? He wants them impressionable and trainable. That's his desire. And so, yeah, an 18-year-old isn't actually as hot as like a 23-year-old, let's say. But at the same time, the 18-year-old is a blank slate. So, yeah, sure, she looks like a half of a point worse than what she will do in her mid-20s because she doesn't know how to do her makeup exactly correct. But at the same time, is that really that much of a deal breaker? It really isn't. You'd rather the less mileage on the car. Sure, is the fender better on the Camry with 150,000 miles on it? Yes. Is it a slightly better car at that current moment? Yes. But wouldn't you rather a car without the spoiler, without the extra luxury, but is 0 miles? You would rather the Camry with 0 miles 9 out of 10 times. That's the reason why Zherka and other people like that in agreement with him want the younger women, the teenagers, you know what I mean, like late teens, 18, 19. That's the sort of idea, not the sort of thing of like, well, they're hotter when they're 18, because that's obviously not even true. Like, basically a girl looks pretty hot, let's say from 18 to 27 or something, okay? From there, like, you get a good 10 years and, you know, she looks fine. And so, you know, for the criticism of like, oh, you like them young because you like them to look young. No, because again, like you just said, oh no, 25-year-olds are even hotter theoretically, but I mean, it's not really the best investment. And so we ought to be thinking of women in the terms of franchise mode. Who are you going to start your NFL franchise with? A 35-year-old quarterback who's really good right now, like let's say Aaron Rodgers, or would you rather a quarterback that's like 21 that doesn't really know a lot but has full potential, like Anthony Richardson? That's the sort of diagnostic we're trying to run. Okay, so yes, a 25-year-old girl has more experience, does better makeup, but is Tom Brady really going to be a good quarterback for 20 years or however long you want the marriage to last? Clearly there's going to be a fall off. Might as well just get a 20-year-old that won't fall off for like a good 10 to 15 years. And then, I mean, you could just write that out, obviously.
On a date, and it kind of feels like a war. But if you date a 19-year-old girl, she just has fun. Right. And it's like you're never competing with fun. Because like when we're done working, right, when I'm done cranking your guys' viewer count, I just want peace and quiet and fun. No way I'll find that from a 25-year-old woman. There's no way.
You say that.
That's true because, again, you know, I'm in college. Right now, the girls in college don't really care how much money you have. They care about, like, if you can take them out to the movies. That's about it, right? Like, sort of things that day-to-day, like, oh, can you buy me this meal at the Panda Express? That's the sort of things that, as a 20-year-old, you have to worry about. Not this idea of, like, well, what about the mortgage? What about this trip to Hawaii or something? But once you're dating women that are older, once you're out of college, once you're out of law school, in my case, if you're somebody who's already dealing in the real world, swimming in the deep end with the sharks, the women are going to expect you to provide a whole levy of things. And at that point, if you're a 27-year-old or somebody Zherka's age, like in your late 20s, who has money, would you rather a girl who at 25 is going to be asking the world of you, asking for half of your shit right off the bat, and a lot of commitment financially, or would you rather hang out with a 19-year-old who's yet to really deal with that sort of responsibility, and so you can afford to spend maybe a couple thousand on her every month, but you're still making like 20 grand a month, so you're chilling. Whereas again, the 25-year-old's gonna be like, okay, well, who do you have the mortgage in the name of? Who's the lease under, etc., busting your balls constantly. Again, 19-year-old seems like a simpler thing to go for. Again, I have no idea what that's like. I've never long-term dated a girl that's noticeably older than me, than, you know, like more than a year older, so I have no idea. But from the way he's explaining it, it makes a lot of sense.
But you literally were talking about how you were like addicted to this chick who was trying to ruin your life and doing like coke every day. Like,
Yeah, I was doing it. She was not.
Yeah, but how can you say you want like a relaxing woman when you repeatedly talked about how you're like addicted to this crazy ass
Well,
chick?
for a year, she stayed in a basement and never went out once. You women could never do that. What she
but you
did was
kept going
amazing.
back to the crazy ass chick like multiple times. You
First
said
of
it.
all,
You're
no.
addicted to her. You got banned off Twitch because of it.
No, I didn't. I got banned because I called JD a whore, right? And I should probably take it back. Fuck that hoe. Hey, yo, check this out. Let me tell you something. It's all right. I already made my money. I robbed you guys. But yo, check this out. Why I like psychotic women who try and kill me when they're pretty is because, yeah, I'm not joking. Why I always, since I was a bouncer, loved when men were afraid of the psycho. Like, she's pretty, but that psycho bitch. Because if you're hot, you get fucked by a lot of people. If you're hot and psycho, for some reason, maybe it's the therapy and stuff, you don't get fucked as much. That's why I like going for those girls. It's not that I like to fucking argue with them. It's that their body counts are lower than a hot girl. If a hot girl's not a psycho, it's like 40 dudes bust inside her, and I gotta date the Twinkie. I'm not doing that shit. I want the psycho. I'll deal with the knife in my face. I'll deal with all that.
So you're okay with arguing? You're okay with the knife to your
Absolutely.
face?
I love arguing. What the fuck?
So then your whole
Arguing
sentence
with a
about the
woman?
18-year-old
It's like
girl
fighting a
doesn't make
child.
sense.
Huh?
Your argument about like an 18-year-old only, like that doesn't make sense because you love these psycho crazy bitches.
No, the 18-year-old is bringing the 18-year-old is bringing what the psycho's bringing, a low to zero body count.
No, you said the 18-year-old is bringing no opinion.
But
And now you literally said, I love those psycho bitches that argue with me.
No,
It's a
listen.
contradiction.
No. If the missing variable is she got fucked by less dudes, then she seems 18 to me. That's the
No,
only
but
thing.
the main thing that you're talking about
Connect
earlier
the
was
dots. The
opinions.
fuck? I thought you're Puerto Rican.
Dude, nice to
Okay, so right there, she actually has him by the balls. He contradicted himself subtly over time. That's because he's cooking, he's throwing inanimate amounts of shit into the pot, and now there's an ingredient that doesn't really mesh together. He's putting ketchup and mustard together, mayonnaise. It's kind of weird because he's not making hot dogs. He's over here making some sort of bratwurst. No, okay. Anyway, my analogy didn't make sense. But now he's gonna just basically ridicule her and make an ass out of herself so he can kind of like save face. And so he's saying, "Connect the dots, bitch. Aren't you Puerto Rican?" Again, that literally makes no sense. I don't even understand what the reference is. So, but again, it's funny because it's random.
but okay.
All right, so I have a question for the ladies real quick.
All right, so that basically explains it all, guys. So that more or less gives you the synopsis as to why he's so effective, okay? Guys, tell me what you thought of the reaction down below. I thought it was pretty good because, again, it kind of illustrates the broader point is that he can blatantly contradict himself, but because he's so confident and because his wit is so high, he's basically able to endure any sort of shit test any sort of girl can throw at him. Because not only can he resolve himself in the middle of a brain fart, but he can also make it he can be so comedic to a point to where he can make the butt of the joke anybody around him. So he can redirect any sort of ridicule that's aimed towards him to people like Pixie, the Puerto Rican girl, whatever. That's the sort of mentality that he has. And so, yeah, he's coked out of his mind. He's insane. He'll say stuff that is really stupid, stuff that you can disagree with. But at the end of the day, he's so funny that people just people just like it. And I just say that as somebody who's young, right? I'm 20, I'm in college. I think he's cool. I think he'd be the great president of a frat. But again, he's like pushing 30, you're 29. Is that going to last forever? No. But while the embers are hot, I really appreciate Zherka's content. And again, I don't agree with everything. In fact, he's a horrible Christian. Just at the bottom line is that he's fornicating a ton, sleeping with these younger women. It's very immoral. I disavow it. But at the same time, would I do the same thing if I were in his position? I mean, if you're sleeping with girls in college, are you any better than Zherka? Can I say I'm better than Zherka? Not really, unless you say, well, Lalo, you don't do cocaine. True, but I can't even afford cocaine, so am I really going to give myself credit for not doing it? I don't know. So again, I'm not going to talk shit. There's going to be a lot of moral effing, a lot of people being sanctimonious about stuff that they have no control over, and people just need to let go of that. Odds are that if you're not presented with the same temptations as somebody else, for you to really talk down to them is just condescending and it's cope, okay? If you're living in your mother's basement, then you ought not be in a position to say that you wouldn't bang a ton of OnlyFans teenage, 18-year-old models in a penthouse in Miami, because odds are you would be doing that. And if you're jacking off to porn to any capacity, you cannot really talk crap about people like Zherka, because you're already imagining the real thing. Meanwhile, he's living it out in real life. So how about you sit in the corner and you fucking piss off? Because again, you ought to have a moral high ground if you're going to criticize. That's why I like Zherka. Again, flawed person, extremely flawed. I would not want to be like him necessarily, but I can admire how he can dominate a room, how the charisma overflows to such a capacity that he could be half falling asleep on coke somehow and come up with stuff that is very hard to even fathom. That's the sort of brilliance that people like him and Donald Trump can possess. And yes, there's a lot of negative character traits, but a lot of that is emboldened, and a lot of his faults are ostensibly strengths when you break it down in some other way. So again, his narcissism, arrogance, and pride, big problems. As a good Christian, you ought not have these things. But at the same time, if you want to bang young chicks, if you want to be confident in front of a bunch of young men, thousands of them watching you every single day, that's the sort of thing you need to actually be famous. And now he's a millionaire basically, or whatever approximates to that sort of lifestyle, at least temporarily. And that's at the foot of him being such a scummy person. Just on the interpersonal level, he seems to be very selfish. Yet again, of course, he's still thriving in that ecosystem, because that's the sort of thing you need when you're at the top of the food chain. You need to be the shark. You cannot relent. You cannot fall asleep. You need to be high energy like me. And so you have to astroturf the energy even if you don't necessarily feel it. So that's why I endorse Jon Zherka as a content creator. I watch virtually everything he puts out, because again, it's some sort of level of keynote that you cannot really get anywhere else. And there's big channels with millions of subscribers that don't have the charisma that he has. And that's something that you ought to take note of. Myron from Fresh and Fit, I really like that guy a lot. But then again, he's just more boring. He's more logical, more calm, and it's just not as exciting as Jon Zherka. So when people call him the cocaine crusader, it's somewhat funny, because again, cocaine is not the most Christian thing, but at the same time, he's probably converting a lot more people to Christianity, or at least less antipathy towards that religion, than over a lot of pastors nowadays, by obviously the internet making stuff viral, but overall just appealing to the youth. And again, that won't really work out in 10 years, but right now, it's going to be hot, okay? Trump, there was a Trump train 5 years ago. There's the Zherka hype wagon. I'm hitched to it. I like it a lot. And again, I have friends that'll be like, oh, he's not Christian, whatever. Look, honestly, you're a fucking loser. Most people that are criticizing Zherka do not have the clout, do not have the capacity to get with them as many women. So are you going to big talk him? Not really, okay? So I'm not going to hold it against him too much. Okay, like for example, some libtard, man-titted up, soy jack, Vaush lookalike, Vaush clone, some retard on the internet could be like, oh, Donald Trump cheated on his wife in the 80s with a Playboy model. I mean, would you do the same thing if you were in his position? Probably. Why? Because you probably jerk off to Reddit porn. So can you talk shit? No, you can't. So how about you guys stop talking trash, okay? It's called Prisoner's Dilemma. I think it's called Slave Morality, some sort of like Nietzschean thing. Don't worry about it too much. Anyways, thank you for watching the video. Comment down below what you thought. And if you like the energy, ask me more video suggestions. Give me more of them, because I need more content, because I'm bored. And if you guys are asking if I'm on any sort of substances, I'm on absolutely no substances, because I'm just me and I'm unique. Okay? All right, snowflakes, let him coke. Let him coke.